real, it's live, and as some comrades say, it's lit, right? lit. Real, live, lit. Right? The revolution is lit.
Uhuru comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday study, live with the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. This week, we pause our History of Anti-Colonial Revolution series to focus our discussion on the legacy of Huey P. Newton, chairman of the Black Panther Party. He has since become an iconic figure, but his true legacy and struggle for the freedom of Black people has faced severe historical revisionism. The African People's Socialist Party has managed to keep the true definition of Huey alive, starting with our party's intervention in overturning the slander campaign made against him following his assassination. Our party organized the Honor Guard, printed the programs, waged a scorched earth campaign that covered the streets with spray-painted portraits of Huey and led massive crowds of supporters for his funeral. It was at the Oakland, California Uhuru House where Huey would make some of his final political speeches, one of the most famous we've coined, passing the torch, for this quote: "You may not have the Black Panther Party, but you have the Uhuru House. You may not have the Black Panther newspaper, but you have the burning spear. So they haven't done anything by crushing one organization." Just 3 days following the assassination of Huey, the chairman delivered a mobilizing presentation to a packed Uhuru House at a memorial organized by the African People's Socialist Party that we'll be watching today. Following this presentation, we'll bring on the chairman to discuss the significance of Huey in the context of the continuum of Black liberation struggle. Before we start, make sure to share this study far and wide. Take a moment right now to like this video, tag your friends, subscribe to our Burning Spear YouTube channel and Chairman Omali's Twitch channel. Also, throughout the study, we'd like for any donations to go to uhurutours.com/donate. That's uhurutours.com/donate. Donating to Uhuru Tours today will help to bring the electrifying presentations of Chairman Omali Yeshitela to the Northeast U.S. this fall. Again, that's uhurutours.com/donate. Now, let's watch Chairman Omali Yeshitela speak on the legacy of Huey P. Newton.
I want to call up current leadership of the International African Revolution, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Omali Yeshitela.
I'd like to express our appreciation for everybody coming out tonight and to remind us that we are talking about salute to the memory of Huey P. Newton, Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party, one of the best sons of Africa. I say that as a materialist and somebody who truly believes, as Huey P. Newton believed, that the people are the real makers of history, that it is the people who make history, not heroes, not individuals, not kings and queens, etc., but ordinary people who are in our lives simply struggling like to produce and reproduce human life, which is what human life, human society is all about in the final analysis. But even understanding that people are the real makers of history, we also understand that occasionally history will thrust forward individuals who best represent a historical period than anybody else. Maybe not before that period came about, maybe not after that period passed, but for the time, for this critical period, every now and then history will thrust forward those forces who are critical and who are significant, in whom all the elements of a period themselves are concentrated. And the way they walk and the way they talk and the things they do are earth-shaking. And sometimes they flare across the sky like a shooting star, and you can't ever forget them. Sometimes, just for that period of time, history will thrust forward forces so that we recognize Huey P. Newton as that. Somebody says what Huey P. Newton was a few years ago, a few weeks ago. That's not what was important about Huey P. Newton. Even the people who attempt to use who Huey P. Newton was last month did not hate him for what he was last month. They hated him for that time when he stood so tall that everybody in the world had to recognize in Huey P. Newton there stands oppressed black people when we stand at our full stature. It was in Huey P. Newton that they saw us all, and therefore he received the wrath of an oppressive system that was designed to crush us all. He was in the center of the hurricane that bombed and attempted to annihilate the whole people of Vietnam. He was in the center of the hurricane that attempted to keep the people of Cuba oppressed forever, and he stood up against that. He was in the center of a hurricane of a system that was born of the enslavement of African people, and possibly in the process of so doing, the destruction of 1/10 billion black people. Huey P. Newton faced them. You had a shotgun in his hand, a look of determination on his face, and an understanding at the time that the will of the people is greater than the man's technology. That was the significance of Huey P. Newton. Today, people are writing and speaking about Huey P. Newton, oftentimes in a fashion that describes them more than it describes Huey P. Newton. If you ever read the description of a brave man written by Howard, he will be called a fool. oppressor. Malcolm X once said it. They'll have you loving your enemies and hating your friends. It was said about Marcus Garvey one time that he gave us backbone where before we just had jawbone. Truly, that can be said about Huey P. Newton. Huey P. Newton was thrust forth from the wombs of history during a period, a critical period. Let's talk about it just briefly. Because somebody wants to make it a mystery, the fact that Huey P. Newton picked up the gun. But first of all, everybody in the world who was intelligent at the time had a gun in his or her hand. As the Chinese once said it, there was great disorder under the heavens. There is an attempt being made to rewrite history, to put forth that era of the 60s as that time when everybody just went a little crazy, especially in Oakland, California. Maybe there was something in the water. There's no rational explanation for it. All the intelligent, wise people grew out of it, changed their minds, etc. Look on Wall Street, they show you some of the people who was important during the 60s making millions of dollars today, they say. Look in this church, they tell you, see how this person came to his senses and now preaching non-violence and love to everybody, etc. But the truth of the matter is that what happened in the 60s, what gave birth to the Black Panther Party, Johnny Spain and Huey P. Newton was not peculiar to Oakland, California, or even to the U.S. The truth of the matter is, when Huey P. Newton was thrust forth in history, we lived during a period where revolution was the main trend in the entire world. In the entire world. They will raise up Huey P. Newton in a way to try to make you hate him. You understand? They don't just do it to Huey. They dig up Martin Luther King every now and then and tell you who he was sleeping with. But you didn't follow Martin Luther King because of who he was sleeping with. And you didn't follow Huey P. Newton because he hung out in West Oakland and might have did drugs. And they know it. That's your oppressor attempting to define this reality for us. Huey P. Newton understood this reality better than anybody. I said, better than anybody. He understood this reality. He was a scientist. Ain't nothing wrong with science. Because I said he understood it better than anybody, I don't mean that nobody had differences with him and that he wasn't wrong sometimes. We're not talking about whether somebody was right or wrong sometime. We're talking about whether or not they got a handle on the critical question. Yeah. On the critical question. And he had a handle on the critical question. They say Huey P. Newton taught violence because he said that political power comes from the barrel of the gun. But everybody knows political power comes from the barrel of the gun. Listen to me. Listen to me. Every hungry person in this country knows that what stands between them and the full share of the Lucky and Safeway is somebody with a gun. Every homeless person in this country, and in Oakland, California, where there are more than 1,400 abandoned houses, know that what stands between them and an empty house is somebody with a gun. Didn't take Huey P. Newton to say that. We always knew it. He just had the guts to say it in public. Political power comes from the barrel of a gun. He says we're practical revolutionaries. We don't just talk about it. We do something about it. That's what he said, isn't it? And the stand that he took emboldened black and other oppressed peoples across the planet Earth. Everybody. In England, I talked to people who participated in the Black Panther movement. In India, There was the Black Panther Party that still exists even up until today. When Huey P. Newton was assassinated on the streets of Oakland, we got phone calls from Sweden, from Africans from West Africa, from England, etc. We talked to African people who are in what they call South Africa, the real name of which is Azania. When a crook steals something, I always change the name, scratch the name. Used to be South Africa. Used to be Azania. They come in, steal it, scratch the name off, write South Africa, call themselves South Africans, act like they always been there. Used to be Turtle Island. Europeans leave Europe, come here, kill most of the inhabitants of the land, take the land from it, scratch the name off, call it America, call themselves Americans, act like they always been here, bring you over, scratch the name off, call you Americans, Negro Americans, Afro-Americans, African Americans, Americans after a while, Americans one day in the near future. Act like you always been here. But Huey P. Newton was a scientist. And we have to grapple with the science that Huey grappled with. I want to pass it because otherwise we get stuck with bourgeois, vulgar opinions. I had an uncle who was the toughest guy in St. Petersburg, Florida. He wasn't a revolutionary, but he had enough science to be able to say that, Slim, that's what he called. He said, conversation is the cheapest commodity on the block. Everybody's got one, right? So we're not talking about vulgar opinions, like everybody has got an opinion. We're talking about science. And when we talk about science, we're talking about, therefore, something which can be backed up by something real in the world. Because there are forces who would have you believe what your eyes tell you to be otherwise, what your ears tell you to be otherwise. They'll say, America, when will America be America again? And you're supposed to, yeah, when will again? You mean we got to do this one more time? You know what I'm saying? And they will say silliness to you like that. They will try to bomb you with nonsense and a certain kind of humanism. You know, we're all in the same boat. We're all together, all in the same boat. Hell, we was in the same boat when we came here. Except I was down there tied down and you was up there being the captain. So it didn't matter, we're all being in the same boat. We have to, even as we recognize the universality of our existence and being here on the planet Earth, recognize those lines, draw those lines that can tell us why particular things happen to us as a people that distinguish from what's happening to anybody else. You gotta know that, don't you? You must know that. If somebody asks you, people don't just walk around saying they want fruit, they want grapes. And they want oranges. You gotta be able to make a distinction even when you talk about fruit. And even as we talk about all the peoples on the planet and all the peoples inside this country, we got to be able to determine with all these people, why is it that certain kinds of things happen to us? If we don't do that, we're in big time trouble. But Huey P. Newton didn't do that. That's one of the reasons he received the wrath of the system. I want to just share something that he said that made me love him, and I think made him loved by masses of people around the world. You know, it wasn't just black people love Huey P. Newton, right? He told you that when he said, when I was in China, I was talking to the Vietnamese. So the Vietnamese didn't think there was nothing wrong with Huey P. Newton other than black people. Otherwise, the Vietnamese would be in trouble, wouldn't they? You notice that during the Vietnamese Revolution, everybody telling them that y'all shouldn't be fighting against American imperialism, y'all should try to integrate instead. They don't say that till it's us. Nobody told the Cubans, look, stop fighting, saying we shall overcome and integrate with your oppressors. Cubans existed as a national entity, and the Vietnamese as a national people fighting for national independence. We've been put in a trick bag. Somebody took away our national self-determination and then said that they ain't doing it because they didn't take away your freedom, they define you as some kind of race. But the problem we suffer from is not because white people are white and we are black and Mexicans and other people look different from us. The problem we suffer from is because somebody established themselves and their own freedom at the expense of ourselves ourselves and our freedom. You have a nation that rests upon the oppression of another nation. That's what we are talking about. See? So you don't get hung up with we can love anybody, can we? Although in the 60s there was a time, because we had to really make a struggle in the 60s, there was a time during the civil rights movement where it was necessary because a certain sector of our population that was trying to keep us from identifying our enemy and fighting for our oppression and fighting against our oppression, trying to keep us turning the other cheek and groveling on our bellies. This is before the advent of Huey P. There was a certain sector that told us we were not supposed to fight back. We were just supposed to lay on our bellies and die. Somehow Malcolm used to characterize it as, what did he call it? He said, overwhelm them with your capacity for love, right? But in the civil rights movement itself, this is the part of the movement that gave birth to the Black Panther Party and to Huey P. Newton. There used to be a song based on a popular song at the time called Too Much Love. And the song went like, too much love, too much love. Nothing kills a nigga like too much love. Because the truth of the matter is that the time has come to stand up. And even in the process of loving. Because I've got to love me long enough to live. And I've got to love you seriously enough to do for you what I've always done for my oppressors. Because nobody ever said we was too violent when we were fighting in Korea for them. Or when we were fighting in Vietnam for them. We just got violent at that juncture when we began to identify what our own interests are and were capable of fighting for that. Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party, you know the history of it. In our movement, that is what was called the Civil Rights Movement, a great debate began to rage around the question of self-defense. Should we just continue to do, as Malcolm X say, meet police dogs, the most vicious kind of attacks on our people, talking about overwhelming them with our capacity to love? Or should we act like all the other intelligent human beings on the planet Earth and defend ourselves? That was a question the whole civil rights movement was involved in. Now, it was not just some abstract ideological question. It was a question that had practical, material implications. What were they? In the first place, our movement, our civil rights movement, was something that was given birth by material conditions in the world. It was the fact that the United States, U.S. imperialism, had become the most powerful country on the planet Earth at that time as a consequence of the Second Imperialist War, the second war to redivide the world. Whereas before, Europe controlled most of the resources of Africa, Asia, and Latin America as colonies. Black people, brown people, yellow people as colonies. Now, with the Second Imperialist War, that was a war to redivide the world. I don't care what nobody tells you about fighting for democracy against Hitler and the rest of it, because even as they was fighting against Hitler, they was lynching black people in this country. I don't want anybody ever tell me anything about Nazism, fascism, and Hitler, etc. Talk to me about Thomas Jefferson. Talk to me about George Wallace. Talk to me about Robert Kennedy. Talk to me about American imperialism. There's no imperialism ever on the planet Earth being worse than U.S. imperialism. There's no oppression ever existed worse than the oppression that African people have suffered right here in this country. Don't tell me about Hitler and 6 million people dying. They killed 100 million black people just from Africa to here. So this country, this system, a system born of killing Indians and enslaving people, has no redeeming value. It's like what the Supreme Court that Brother Spain was talking about just said that pornography was. It has no socially redeeming value. Check it out. It is a system which built institutions, like Huey P. Newton was talking about. Built institutions. Institutions sprang from them. Law, the rest of it, that validated its own existence. So that slavery was legal, getting away from slavery was illegal. Killing Indians was legal, getting away from being killed was illegal. When you understand the question of national oppression, then you understand the question of forces who control power make the law. The slave master made the law, not the slave. If And if he could make the law, definitely slavery wouldn't be legal. So we got all these institutions built upon our oppression. That's what we have to understand. In the first place, that's what we have to understand. So we have a whole system, and during the Second Imperialist War, this country became filthy rich, but it had a problem with where it was going to get workers to transform the raw materials that was being brought from Africa, Asia, and Latin America. They used to get them from East Europe, but at that time, Eastern Europe was considered a part of the Soviet bloc after the war, so they couldn't do it. So they got them from down south. This was like the third great migration of African people in this country. This is when most of your parents came from Louisiana and Texas and the rest of it to California. This is when we moved from Mississippi into Chicago and other places, and from Georgia up into New York and the rest of it, getting away from down there to factories that was opened up. This was the basis of the momentum around civil rights and this kind of thing. First of all, so that we could have the mobility to leave a plantation in the South to go to a plantation in the North. This was the basis for the impetus that saw civil rights, white politician, northern politician, because this is the basis of liberalism. White liberalism was based on the need of a certain sector of the white ruling class in the North, where they needed us as workers, as opposed to that sector of the white ruling class in the South, where they needed us digging ditches and picking cotton and the rest of that. So here's the basis for a struggle. I'm talking about material basis for it. And so the basis, we saw meeting together the interests of the liberal sector of the white ruling class and the interests of what we call the black petty bourgeoisie or the black middle class. The black middle class also had its own aspirations. First of all, it hated itself. First of all, it is alienated from itself. It hates being black. It hates it more than anything. It would rather be with white people and like white people more than anything on the planet. So it's filled with self-hatred. That's why every time it gets a chance, it gets the first thing leaving the black community. It gets the first thing getting out of here because it's filled with self-hatred. In the second place, we're talking about having interest in becoming themselves. What W.B. Du Bois had was defined as a talented tent, as that sector of the black community that could represent white power inside our own community. They knew that for them to get elected, you had to be able to vote. You don't believe, you think I'm making it up. You say, well, no, they were really nice people. They may have been. May have loved their mothers and the whole bit. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at the world today, you see almost 10,000 black elected officials in this country, and you see black people in worse conditions than we've ever been in our existence. You don't hear one of them saying a single thing about the oppression of black people. They don't even say black people. They're talking about the haves and the have-nots. They're talking about the left down, bottom, and the boat at the bottom got to rise and this kind of stuff, but they don't say nothing about black people are suffering. Black people are suffering. So, here you have this black petty bourgeoisie wedded with the liberal sector of the white ruling class that funded the civil rights movement. I say that as somebody who participated in the civil rights movement. I say that as somebody who registered black voters throughout the South at the risk of life. So I'm even in the process of doing it, I'm critiquing my own activity. And I'm talking about we were a part of a movement that was funded by the liberal sector of the white ruling class. And that is why that movement had to have, as a philosophy, non-violence, not as a tactic. It didn't say, listen, you know, we're outnumbered, we're surrounded at different times, you can't just walk on a demonstration picking up a gun. Philosophically, it said non-violence was out of the question because it was funded by the liberal sector of the ruling class, and the liberal sector of no sector of the ruling class is about to give you some money that you might buy a Uzi with and hide out in Acorn or any other project inside this country. So this debate was raising up inside the black liberation movement itself. The thing was so serious that before you could even go on a demonstration with these guys, they would give you lessons in being beaten up. They would give you lessons, you know, like you didn't have enough practice, right? They would say that this, and they would beat you up to make sure how you would react before you got to the demonstration. There was a whole great struggle happening inside our movement about this question of philosophical nonviolence. And then there was Malcolm X, who was critiquing and criticizing all of this stuff. And then we look at Malcolm, we see the impact on Huey P. Newton, the impact on all of us around this particular question. And then you see Huey P. Newton, who, as he said, said, we are practical revolutionaries. We'll end the debate. We'll show you where the debate is. And they put on blue turtleneck shirts, black leather jackets, a parade, a bandolier, and picked up a shotgun. Discussion ended. Here it is. And it excited the imagination of African people throughout the world. It was a question put forth by history, not Huey. Huey didn't make up the debate. He wasn't in the march in Mississippi in 1966, where the debate broke out with the demand for black power. He didn't make up that discussion. The movement, history itself demanded that we address the question of whether or not we'll be continuing to grovel at the feet of our oppressors for the rest of our existence, which surely won't be long, of whether we shall stand up like real men and women and take responsibility for our lives and the history that we have to make. It wasn't just important for us. It was important for all the other people who were dying at the hand of U.S. imperialism as well. And as a consequence of the action that Huey P. Newton took, it was necessary for U.S. imperialism to retreat out of Vietnam. Yes, it was necessary for U.S. imperialism to retreat out of Vietnam. How do I know? I know it not only because of the practice of what was happening inside this country. I know it not only because the U.S. had to fight their way out of Detroit, and because the Vietnamese told us that they learned the lessons that they put down in the Tet Offensive from the Black Revolution, the Black Rebellion in Detroit. I also learned it because the other peoples around the world look for the Black liberation movement and unity. We live in a period today where oppressed peoples have to try to make a deal with U.S. imperialism, have to try to make a deal, but during the time of the 60s when we stood tall, then Che Guevara could call for 2, 3 mini Vietnams, and black people in Oakland and throughout this country stood up and tried to accommodate him. We made them come out of Vietnam. Huey P. Newton, writing about the history, this is in June 1967, the month after the comrades went into Sacramento with the guns. Remember that? The state capitol, where they were debating again. There's another debate. Where they were debating the question of whether they were going to take guns away from black people, just like they debated in 1989. And 40 Panthers walked right into the middle of the debate in Sacramento. The state legislature, debate over. Black history is on the scene. Black people standing up and being able to stand up because the stance his brother took. Now you know yourself how hard it is to take that kind of stand. You know it every time the police say something to you and you bite your tongue because you don't want to say nothing back because you don't want to go to jail. You know it every time you're in a store and some rotten, filthy clerk messes over you just because you didn't look right or didn't say the right word. You can't even have a decent argument with them as a man or a woman because you know the first thing they're going to do is dial 911 and the police going to escort you out with knots upside your head. You know what I'm saying? You know that. You know what it is to live in America. You know you're scared to open your mouth because you end up spending the rest of your life in the chain gang for nothing. But Huey P. Newton stood up. He stood up. He didn't just stand up. On one day in October, right over there in West Oakland where they assassinated him, Huey P. Newton took a stand. He stood up, and they fell down. When we stand up, they fall down, because that's the nature of this system. They stand on our back. When we stand up, they fall down. Huey P. Newton stood up. Officer Frey fell down, went down. Now, Officer Frey might have been a nice guy. You understand what I'm saying? He might have loved his mother. His wife might have wore white when he got married. He might even help little old ladies in the white community across the street. But it ain't nothing personal on Officer Frey. Just like when he stopped Huey in that car, it wasn't nothing personal. He just do it to all the black people. You understand what I'm saying? That's the nature of the system. The system is against black people. They don't care which one until you become so significant that the rest of us look up to you. But ordinarily, like they have a thing in this system, right here in this city. I forgot, they call it some kind of proactive policing. Where the thing is, according to what black policemen have said, their intent is to stop every black man in the city of Oakland and Americans. So they don't care who you are, they just want all of you. That's the way the state functions. It has to do not even with Frey as a nice person. I'm sure he was nice. But Huey was writing in June of 1967. I'm sure you can find a lot of people. Every time you notice when a policeman dies, a lot of people think he's nice. They come out, hundreds of them, sometimes thousands, and have parades and salute and stuff. They don't do it like that, but they salute, and everybody say he was a nice guy. So I believe that there's, from a certain viewpoint, even a policeman is nice. It's not personal. My daughter once talked to me about being a policeman. I said, that's cool, but you understand what side you're on once you do it. I'm with everybody else. He was writing about how this country was founded. It ain't personal, is it? That's what science is about, so you don't get bogged down in emotionalism and whether it's personal or not like that. Just because you like a funeral home director don't mean that you're going to die a couple of years early so you can get the body. Understand? It ain't personal. Your best friend might be a funeral director. You understand what I'm saying? You might go with a slumlord, but you don't raise your own rent just because you go with them. You got interest, they got interest. You understand? Ain't nothing personal in it. Know what I'm saying? It ain't personal. So Huey was writing, he said, talking about how white people came here as an extended part of a colony from Europe. He said, now these same colonized white people, these ex-slaves, robbers and thieves, have denied the colonized black man the right to even speak of abolishing this oppressive system which the white colonized American created. They have carried their madness to the four corners of the earth, and now there is universal rebellion against their continued rule and power. He didn't say there was a rebellion in Oakland or on East 14th. He said universal rebellion against their continued rule and power. The black people in America, he said, are the only people who can free the world. Loosen the yoke of colonialism and destroy the war machine. As long as the wheels of the imperialist war machine are turning, there's no country that can defeat this monster of the West. But black people can make a malfunction of this machine from within. Black people can destroy the machinery that's enslaving the world. See, he didn't say violence for the sake of violence. He said we can destroy the machine that's enslaving the world. Unselfish, totally unselfish. America cannot stand to fight every black country in the world and fight a civil war at the same time. It is militarily impossible to do both of these things at once. The slavery of blacks in this country provides the oil for the machinery of war that America used to enslave the peoples of the world. Without this oil, the machinery cannot function. We are the driving shaft. We are in such a strategic position in this machinery that once we become dislocated, the functioning of the remainder of the machinery breaks down. Pinned up in the ghettos of America, surrounded by his factories and all the physical components of his economic system, we have been made into the wretched of the earth, who are relegated to the position of spectators while the white races run their international con game on the suffering peoples. We have been brainwashed to believe that we are powerless and that there is nothing we can do for ourselves to bring about a speedy liberation for our people. We have been taught that we must please our oppressors, that we are only 10% of the population, and therefore we must confine our tactics to categories calculated not to disturb the peace of our tormentors. The power structure inflicts pain and brutality upon the peoples and then provides controlled outlets for the pain in ways least likely to upset them or interfere with the process of exploitation. The people must repudiate the channels established as tricks and deceitful snares by the exploiting oppressors. The people must oppose everything the oppressor supports and support everything that he opposes. If black people go about their struggle for liberation in the way that the oppressor dictates and sponsors, then we will have degenerated to the level of groveling flunkies for the oppressor himself. When the oppressor makes a vicious attack against freedom fighters because of the way that such freedom fighters choose to go about their liberation, then we know we are moving in the direction of our liberation. The racist dog oppressors have no rights which oppressed black people are bound to respect. As long as the racist dogs pollute the earth with the evil of their actions, they do not deserve any respect at all. And the rules of their game, written in the people's blood, are beneath contempt. Huey P. Newton. That's the basis. That's why Huey is dead. I hope you know that. Now, I want to say one other thing, and I'm going to get out your way. That has to do with this question of who killed Huey P. Newton. Did the government kill Huey P. Newton? The government murdered Huey P. Newton. I want to say one other thing in relationship to that. The first thing I want to say is that I don't know any place on the planet Earth, no place on the planet Earth, where African children are not abused children, where African people were not abused people. We live in a country where in the capital, the so-called national capital, Washington, D.C., the infant mortality rate is equal to that of Guatemala. We live in a county right here where the infant mortality rate of black children is in Oakland is 4 times higher than white children in Piedmont. Understand? I mean, to be an African in this world is to be abused. You can convince our community that at this time that we begin to see heroin penetrate the black community for the first time. All over the country, heroin everywhere. Sullivan, controlling the counterintelligence program designed to destroy the black liberation movement from in here, leaves to set up to initiate the so-called war against drugs in Southeast Asia, and is responsible for heroin being brought into this country to use against black people. That's in the 1970s. By 1972, 73, for all practical purposes, the black liberation movement has been crushed. So it's not necessary to concentrate the war on single individuals and single organizations so much as it is to keep down this powerful, oppressed mass of African people. The whole people now become the target. So as this country now goes into Latin America, where the war is now being concentrated against the people of Nicaragua and El Salvador and the rest of it, suddenly we see African people in this country decide that we're not going to do heroin anymore. We're going to do what has previously been a white man's drug, and an upper class white man at that, cocaine. We see flooding from cocaine from places in Bolivia, Colombia, and the rest where puppet governments have been set up by U.S. imperialism. Control. You can track this down. The Kerry Commission, which is a commission of the U.S. Congress, has documented that these Contras, these reactionary people who serve U.S. imperialism against their own people, have been trading guns for drugs. They have said that drugs were picked up at the ranch of a man named John C. Hull, who's a CIA agent in Costa Rica. Drugs have been picked up and brought by airplane to Homestead Air Force Base in Florida. What happened to them? But you and I are to believe that somehow black youth in the projects are bringing drugs into this country. You and I are to believe that you're fighting the war against drugs when you tell the police to go kill kids in the projects. They tell us that the drug trade may be worth $300 billion a year. And you and I are supposed to believe that $300 billion a year is coming to the projects in the black communities of this country. It's an insanity. The truth of the matter is, sisters and brothers, and we know it, that if there was no drug money in the community, there wouldn't be no money in the community. Wait a minute. I'm not looking for applause. I'm saying this, that the dope money pays the slumlord his rent. The dope money pays PG&E its money. The dope money pays mud. The dope money pays the politicians, the pigs, and the rest of it. The dope money goes into the real estate industry. That's why the rent gets higher and higher and the cost of housing higher and higher. Black kids in the community ain't got nothing to do with that. The money's being laundered by the banks that's associated with Lionel Wilson and his funky son. And yet, they're attacking my kids in the projects. I didn't make it up. They put it in the newspaper, said Lionel's son's a dope pusher. Said that they called up, FBI called up Lionel and said, Lionel, we're going to raise your son. When they got there, the house was clean, but $250,000 that happened to be in the trunk of the car parked in the driveway, owned by his girlfriend. But he didn't have nothing to do with it. Don't know where the money come from. That every day somebody drop off $250,000. That's clear. Understand? And you and I are supposed to act like we go along with this nonsense. Let me tell you what's happening. Why do they bring the drugs in? A number of reasons. One, money. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. Them kids functioning in the dope trade are penny ante dealers. You understand? They wear everything they own. On their neck, on their fingers, and the car they drive. And they don't keep that but for 2 or 3 months until they accumulate enough, then the state take it from them. You understand? It don't even make no difference how many people they arrest, the dope stay there. They say we can't find it. Hell, you could find it if you put it the same place you put the jobs. You know what I'm saying? You could find it. You could find Gaddafi's baby from 37,000 feet up in the air at 5 o'clock in the morning to bomb him out of existence. If you could find Gaddafi's baby in Libya, you could find the dope coming through the court in Oakland. So I want to be clear. So that's one reason. The money, a lot of money. Talking about a country with a serious budget deficit and a whole capitalist system that's falling apart. I don't care what Gorbachev said, this system is rotten to its seams. You understand? 1. 2, they need it as a political justification to make war against our people and our community. And especially with these old Uncle Toms who run around to my bang to more police because they're punks and cowards. And Huey P. Newton told us not to be punks and cowards. He said, if you got a problem in the community, do something about it. Don't call the oppressor to solve the problem. When in the hell does the police solve the problem for black people? You call the police, say, my son acting crazy, I don't know what to do with the police, come out and kill us, and I ain't know what to do with the bury him. You call the police, say, my television was stolen. You never get your television back, and you're lucky if they don't whoop your ass, and you know it. That's the police. When have you ever heard of a police solving a problem? Truthfully. I'm not just here saying it. If you know they solve problems, then keep calling. I'm talking Africans. I'm talking black people in here. Because they do solve some problems for white people. Sometimes you go in their community, 911, problem solved. But generally speaking, for Africans, that's the truth. Crime watch everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know. So, but they don't solve no problems. They represent the oppressor. So what it means is that we got to solve our own problems. That brother was right when he said ideology is key. You don't even know who you are. You don't even know who you are. That's why Huey P. Newton put down point number 5 of the Black Panther Party 10-point program. Somebody tell me what it was. Has to do with education. It teaches us the true nature of this system and who we are. Right? That's what it was about. That's what the key question was about. So that you know who you are. If you know who you are, you know who your friends are, who your enemies are. Know what to do about it. So, to make war against our community, to destabilize the community, to keep it constantly involved in struggling against itself, self-inflicted wounds all the time against ourselves, going down in the community, all the time. Sometimes you don't know where it's coming from. Sometimes it's drive-by shooting, we don't know who did it. I know who did it. See, but the police wouldn't do nothing like that. Hell, they did slavery. If they did slavery, can't do nothing worse than slavery. What can they do worse than slavery? Anything is an improvement over the way they got us here. system is capable of committing crimes that boggles your mind. So you know you could never do something like that. You just can't believe it. You just refuse to believe they wouldn't do that to us. They did it to you. They did it to you. They do it all the time. They teach you teach you to define violence according to their terms. Huey was violent because he picked up a gun. They destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You never hear anybody say America's violent. So they destabilize our community. They destroy the will of the people, the struggle. You can't think about fighting. Every 15 minutes you got a problem. Every 15 minutes you got to get another hit. Every 15 minutes. You can't think long term if you got to solve a problem every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes problem. Every 15 minutes another hit. How are you going to think about the future? You can't even think about tomorrow, whether or not your child is going to go to school. How are you going to think about the future? Now let me tell you something. My fundamental criticism of this system. My second criticism is of those who know and will not move. Those who know and will not organize. Those who know will simply cry and complain and won't do what has to be done. Those who shirk our responsibility to be men and women and stand up for ourselves. That's my second criticism. I tell you who I don't criticize. I don't criticize the victims. I don't criticize those bloods out in the projects doing the best they can. Because they lost their leadership. When they destroyed the Black Panther Party, they destroyed the leadership. All the peoples have leadership. White people have leadership all the time. You understand? Might be reactionary leadership, but if you ain't got no leadership, you see, the community, all societies follows the leadership of the advanced sector. When we had a leadership out there, the people organized, control the communities, protect the communities, put together a sickle cell anemia testing program under Huey P. Newton, put together free breakfast for school children programs under Huey P. Newton, did all of these kinds of things that taught us to stand up. That's when we had an advanced force out in the community to kill the advanced force, and then the communities open up to anything they want to do. The people are the victims. The kids in the projects are the victims. But our enemies know their potential, just like Huey knew their potential. The enemy knows their potential, partially because of the fact that Huey existed. So, they act like black people with guns have just suddenly become a problem. Those kids in their projects with guns. But I remember another time when black people with guns were a problem, even when they stood up against the drugs in the community. All you got to do is be black, have a gun, and have the potential of organizing your people for liberation, and you're a problem. Those youth out there, the problem is not that they got a gun. The problem is that they don't have ideology. I say 2, 3, many guns. But our responsibility is to give them ideology. Sisters and brothers, our oppressors give with one hand, take back with the other hand. They gave the black petty bourgeoisie what they thought, affirmative action. One hand, take it back with the other hand. They gave them what they thought was these set-asides for the colored, the Negroes get in the office and stuff and pass off this business to their buddies and stuff like that. They gave it to them. They bought them off. Gave it to them in one hand, take it back with the other hand. They are creating misery for the masses of our people all over this country and in Oakland itself. The reason, the conditions that gave birth to the existence of Huey P. Newton continue to be here right now. The need to struggle continues right now. We struggle in the tradition of the Black Panther Party. And by that, let me tell you what it means. Let me be right up front, right up clear to you. Because a lot of people don't like the Uhuru movement, and that's cool too. And I'm going to say why. We think they don't like us and what. We believe that this system has no redeeming value. Huey said, the oppressor for something, we're against it. We'll check out the details later. If they want it, we're opposed to it. Right up front. The system born off our bread, right up front. They say they want to do it, I'm opposed. Check out the deal and say, check out the details. We know something wrong with it. Right? Check out the details. Find out what it is. But if they for it, I'm against it. That's the Uhuru movement. That's the African People's Socialist Party. Right? We believe that the liberation of our people in concert with the liberation of the vast majority of people on the planet, because most of the people on the planet live in abject misery. The few exceptions being Japan, imperialist Japan, imperialist Europe, and imperialist North American communities inside this country. Most of the people on the planet live in abject misery, ignorance, dying from curable diseases and the rest of it. We don't believe that this system can be reformed. We didn't pray our way in here. We don't believe we're going to be able to pray our way out of here. We didn't sing our way in here. We don't believe we're going to be able to sing our way out of here. You understand? Now, that's no radical statement. That means that we think we just like everybody else. Everybody else who wanted freedom had to fight for it. They had to shed their blood to get it, and they had to shed somebody else's blood to get it. So we understand that. That's no call to war. We aren't asking anybody to go out and do anything yet. Because generally what happens is people know when it has to be done. We believe that it's absolutely necessary for our people to wage a struggle for national liberation. We are a people, and we have to fight for our freedom as a people. But the boundaries of our struggles are bigger than North America. We are one people. If we got on the boat in Africa in 1619 as African people, when we got off the boat in Jamestown, Virginia, we were still African people. You can't get on no boat in Africa as one thing and then get off in America as something else. We were Africans then, we are Africans now. We are one people. I know that's a struggle, as particularly from Africans from my generation. But just because you don't know you're an African, don't mean you ain't no African. It just means you're a dumb African. That's all. If you don't believe you're an African, help Michael Jackson find his lips. Because them was African lips that he cut off. You know what? He's regretted it ever since. Because you can't kiss good if you don't have African lips. But the point is, we are one people. They teach us that we are minority. Everybody, we're talking about a minority. White people are minority on the planet. But they teach us we are minority. And you will be a minority if you only see your turf is West Oakland, or East Oakland, or Oakland, or North America. But if you understand that African people, sisters and brothers suffering from the same problem in the same cause are in Kenya, are in Nigeria, Liberia, are in Jamaica, Trinidad, are in Brazil, are in Canada, are in London, all over the world, African people struggling for their identity and struggling for their freedom. And once we identify our identity, come to terms with who we are, there will be nothing on the planet Earth that will be able to stand between us and our freedom. Sisters and brothers, Huey P. Newton was a giant who walked among us. He suffered because his movement was crushed down around him. He said, as long as the people have been here, I've been able to be free. I've been able to be alive. I thought that I wouldn't make 25. Then I thought that I wouldn't be able to get out of prison. But the power of the people is something else. When the people needed Huey to galvanize us into motion, he was there. But he needed the people too. When they defeated our revolution, him, Johnny Spain, and others were trapped in circumstances beyond their control, couldn't do too much about it. Johnny Spain, there were people reaching out, gave him sustenance, etc. Huey P. Newton, he was the lightning rod. He was the one that was on the cutting edge all the time. He drew all the heat. He never lived alone. Since 1967, there was always somebody on his phone who wasn't supposed to be there. There was always somebody listening in his bedroom who wasn't supposed to be there. There was always somebody following him. In fact, the police know who killed him because they were with him on the morning that he died. Did the police or the government killed Huey P. Newton? They killed him just as surely as slavery existed. They killed him just as surely as they brought the first load of heroin in here from Southeast Asia to poison our people and to initiate chemical warfare. They killed him just as surely as they're maiming people right now in Nicaragua and in South America where they're bringing the cocoa leaves in that they make cocaine from. They killed him just as surely as somebody walked up into him. Maybe they didn't have the badge on. Maybe they were undercover and put bullets into his brains. Sisters and brothers, the police department arrested somebody. They even had cameras who took the pictures of them being arrested. And they said, we didn't arrest nobody for Huey P. Newton's death. It might have been, sisters and brothers, that they arrested their own people accidentally and had to turn them loose. I know this. For 20 years, they've wanted to kill Huey P. Newton, and Huey P. Newton is now dead. This government has a track record for killing the people that it wants dead. All power to the people. Black power to the African community.
Uhuru, wow, what a powerful presentation and such an important analysis of Huey P. Newton and just the whole context of the counterinsurgency war that had been made on the Black liberation struggle in this country. We also see just the profound leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, African internationalism, summing up our conditions, summing it up as one Africa, one nation, a line, a position that we carry with us today that is extended through, throughout the world and has united African people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, under the theory of African internationalism. Just really want to salute such a profound presentation, something that is something that people in the comment section are indicating bears so much relevance today, just as it did when that presentation was given. And I just want to remind people that that full house at the Oakland Uhuru House was just 3 days after the assassination of Huey P. Newton. So just 3 days after the African People's Socialist Party was in motion. Well, it was in motion right after the assassination of Huey P. Newton, but was able to pull together this memorial right here, while also, doing incredible actions and organizing different aspects of Huey P. Newton's funeral in Oakland. So just incredible. Really want to salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and also want to say long live Huey P. Newton and the struggle for freedom and liberation for Africa and African people until it's won. And as the chairman has been saying, not one step backward, we are moving forward. So Uhuru, thank you so much for that just incredible, brilliant presentation and the profound leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And we will have him on in just a moment to deepen this discussion and this moment in history. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break for some announcements from our movement. And to kick us off, I have the honor of bringing up Ikinge Maele, who is the Chief of Staff for the Office of Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who will tell you about the exciting Northeast U.S. tour with the chairman this fall and how you can support bringing him there, bringing electrifying presentations just like the one you heard just now. So Uhuru, Comrade Ikinge, welcome.
Uhuru, comrades, and again,
And while we get Ikinge in position, just want to remind people throughout this study, please make sure you are donating to uhurutours.com/donate. We want to be able to, again, bring, Chairman Omali Yeshitela to the Northeast U.S. this fall with the new book, Reparations Now, which we'll talk about in just a moment with the continuing announcements. Are we ready in St. Louis with Comrade Ikinge? I can hear her, just can't see her. All right. Well, why don't I do if St. Louis? Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'm just there are people here in the room that can see me, and I just want to again appreciate this presentation. That was fantastic, and I wish I had been there to be able to view it in person. And again, we're just very happy to announce the Burning Spear publication of the new book. The verdict is in, Reparations Now. It's just about ready to go to the printers. This is a powerful book that will include most of the brilliant testimonies from the first tribunal on reparations to African people held in Brooklyn, New York in 1982. Led by the African People's Socialist Party and Chairman Omali Yeshitela as the people's advocate, the tribunal put the U.S. government on trial for genocide of African people and ruled that African people were owed $4.1 trillion in reparations in the U.S. alone. The chairman used the Genocide Convention of the United Nations as the legal basis for the tribunal and exposed again in 1982 that colonial conditions of African people met every one of the UN's 5 qualifications for the crime of genocide. It was during this time that the chairman determined that the party would make reparations a household word, which indeed it has become. Uhuru Tours is excited and getting ready to launch this tour for this very important book, which will go to Philadelphia, New Jersey, and New York in September. So we're using Omali Taught Me to help us raise resources for the tour. We're asking everyone to go to uhurutours.com/donate. Go to uhurutours.com/donate. Our goal today is to raise $200, and we're going to continue this on a weekly basis until mid-September. I want to thank everyone that has donated thus far, Lynn, Penny, and Lisa. We have raised so far $65. So that means we have how much more to go? Who's in the room counting? 135. So we got $135 more to raise. I'm gonna be watching you. I'm looking at the donate button as the donations come in. But I've been waiting myself for this book, and I'm just really excited about this tour. I'm certain that the Northern region is very excited about the chairman coming, as well as those of you that are in the Northern region is coming to your town, your city. You can also request the chairman by going to Uhuru Tours, info@uhurutours.com as well to request the chairman. So again, we want to raise $200 and we're $135 away. So go to uhurutours.com/donate. And again, fantastic presentation, Chairman Uhuru.
Uhuru, thank you, Comrade Ikinge. And we do have the link up on screen for you to, and we also have our chat moderators who have dropped the link into the chat as well. So you can see that link. We'll keep it up for a little bit longer, uhurutours.com/donate. So let's get into the rest of our announcements, which will also talk about how you can pre-order The Verdict is in Reparations Now. Join the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African liberation struggle. Donate or volunteer to the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign today. For more information, go to handsoffuhuru.org to volunteer, donate, sign the petition, and the emergency response pledge. Every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central Africa time, tune in live for the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa African Region broadcast. Watch and follow on Facebook at facebook.com/APSP Africa Region. In April 2023, the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa counteroffensive was on the ground in revolutionary Cuba. Register for the report back from the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa labor delegation to Cuba, featuring special guests. It takes place Saturday, June 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central Time. Register at tinyurl.com/handsoffmeeting. On Sunday, June 11th, from 1 to 5 p.m. Central Time, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement calls on white people to join an organizer training conference titled Solidarity Will Not Be Silenced. Learn how to build a branch of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement in your city, hold a day of reparations to African people, and build the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. Register at tinyurl.com/solidarityconference. On Saturday, June 17th, from noon to 3 p.m. Central Time, the African People's Education and Defense Fund invites you to celebrate the grand opening of the Black Power Vanguard basketball court located at 4368 College Ave in St. Louis, Missouri. There will be an official ribbon cutting, speakers, games, food, and giveaways for the community. For more information, call 314-380-8616. That's 314-380-8616. The June issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is out. Digital subscribers, the June Spear is available to view in your account. Print subscribers, your June issue is on the way. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it today. Go to theburningspear.com/subscribe and go to theburningspear.store to order your bundle and become a distributor today. Again, announcing the new book coming this month titled The Verdict is In, Reparations Now. This is the 40th anniversary edition of the report from the 1982 World Tribunal on Reparations to African People, including a foreword by Loezi Kinshasa, additional testimonies, and an epilogue by Chairman Omali Yeshitela. You can pre-order your copy now at theburningspear.store. Make sure you like and subscribe to The Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. And again, follow the chairman's pages on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and now Twitch to see all things and presentations from Chairman Omali Yeshitela. And as mentioned, the chairman is hitting the Northeast U.S. for a tour promoting the book, The Verdict is In, Reparations Now. But if you are interested in bringing Chairman Omali Yeshitela to your organization, your campus, you can do so by contacting us. Email us at info@uhurutours.com or call 727-914-3621. And for all other events not mentioned here, you can check out theburningspear.com/events calendar. That is for all events Uhuru movement related. So again, theburningspear.com/events to check out everything that the Uhuru movement is doing in a city and location near you. So that will do it for our announcements today. And now I would like to take this moment to introduce the leader of the African nation, the worldwide African revolution, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who is here today, continuing to lead the struggle to free Africa and African people. Uhuru, Chairman, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. Uhuru, we can't hear you.
Uhuru Director Akile, I want to thank you and thank all the people who have come here in St. Louis, where I am now, at the Uhuru House, Aquaba Hall at the Uhuru House, and all of the party members and Uhuru movement members and others who have come to participate in this study. I think it's an important study for a number of reasons. One thing it does for anybody who's been paying any attention to the extraordinary, bogus, fabricated attack that's been made on me, the African People's Socialist Party, and the Uhuru movement. The claim that somehow the work that we do opposing U.S. war against Russia through Ukraine, opposing, participating in elections that put forth demands for reparations for African people, uniting with Black people all around the world and other oppressed and colonized people. This presentation that was made in 1989 clearly repudiates all of that garbage. And it shows that the work that we are accused of doing as Russian agents is work that we've done since the inception of our organization. And it provides, that presentation contributes to our ongoing discussion, evidence, analysis of the whole history of the struggle of African people, why we have to fight, the conditions of African people in this country, and how it relates to the peoples of the world. So this nonsense that somehow it took Russians to direct us and that we are Russian agents is just one of the things that's repudiated by this presentation, I think. Again, this was a presentation that was made 3 days after the murder of Huey P. Newton in Oakland, California. Secondly, I think it's really important to say that our party had been working in Oakland for at least 8, perhaps 9 years before the assassination of Huey P. Newton. That we were the movement. The African People's Socialist Party was the organization. The Uhuru movement was the movement in Oakland, California. That people defined the struggle at that time we had come to be recognized as the force that defined the revolutionary movement in Oakland, which was really important because, as we know, the Black Panther Party was based there, and it was a powerful influence of the revolutionary movement in places around the world from that location in Oakland, California. So we had become that force in Oakland. And to the extent that we were the ones where the Black Panther newspaper and members of the Black Panther Party used to be ubiquitous presence in Oakland. You couldn't find a single corner in our communities where there was not a person selling the Black Panther newspaper. It was now the Burning Spear that was everywhere. It was now African people selling the Burning Spear, and occasionally members of our organization who were selling the spear would run into Huey P. Newton in these streets and challenge him on a regular basis. When you coming back to the movement, come back to the struggle, etc. And he in most instances he would reply in a way that says that he felt like he had lost his credibility, that that he was no longer could be a factor, and we continued to struggle with him. And in fact, finally we were able to get Huey. The last public presentation that Huey P. Newton made was at the Uhuru House, where we had come to his defense. One of the reasons, because he had been locked up and accused of stealing resources through a school that the Black Panther Party had created in Oakland, California, for young people. It was run by Erica Huggins, who herself became like a really incredible historical figure. In fact, her husband had been assassinated in Los Angeles, California, as a consequence due to FBI intervention and creating a contradiction crisis between the Black Panther Party and the organization United Slaves, or US. So John Huggins was murdered, her husband in Los Angeles, California. So Huey had been accused of stealing resources from that project. And at the same time, this accusation he was facing, we were engaged in an incredible struggle to free a young man who had been arrested by the Oakland Police Department. They said because his name was Freddie Lee Roberts. And they said because Freddie Lee Roberts had shot a cop in the back of the head. And the circumstances surrounding that was the police encountered Freddie Lee Roberts while he was in a laundry house. He was in a public laundry. And when they encountered him, he began to run from them, and cops were chasing him and shooting at him. And one of the cops was shot in the back of the head, and Roberts was charged with his murder. So we were involved in a campaign to free Freddie Lee Roberts. At the same time, this thing happened with Huey P. Newton. So Huey was there. And we referenced, I think, Freddie Lee Roberts during this process. You could see Freddie Lee Roberts, some reference to Freddie Lee Roberts there. Of course, we said that it was Roberts couldn't have done it because for him to have done that, he would have had to been running from cops. He would have had been run backwards while the police was chasing him backwards. And so for him to have shot the cop in the back of the head, like they claim, ultimately being in jail, someone convinced him and he copped the plea. I don't even know if he's out yet, but it was an amazing campaign. And so Huey came in during this. We mentioned during this process Johnny Spain. I said something about Johnny Spain. Johnny Spain was a member of had been with George Jackson. George Jackson had become the field marshal of the Black Panther Party while he was locked up in prison. And in San Quentin, where they murdered George Jackson, what they characterized as an attempted prison break, Johnny Spain was also charged, became one of the San Quentin Six. And so Spain had come from a complicated life like colonized people do. I guess it ain't complicated. I guess for us, it's really normal, usual. life. He had come out of Mississippi. His was a white mother, an African father, and what have you. And it was a real brutal kind of existence. And so he was locked up from a very young person. And so Johnny Spain had spoken at that same event, and he had talked about how he had been in prison, and he was charged with the San Quentin Six as being involved in what they characterize as a prison break by George Jackson that resulted in George Jackson being assassinated from a prison tower by a guard who had murdered him. And Spain, at this meeting that he came to, was saying that how his life and his being in prison and his being a political prisoner was due to the fact that he was abused as a child. And so that was some reference I made about child abuse and how all Africans are abused as children here, and that had nothing to do with what had happened in the way that Spain had talked. I just wanted to give some background on that. But the other thing about that is that that we had to explain to the world and to members of people who have been in the Black Panther Party also what it was they were about, what gave rise even to the Black Panther Party. And we had to explain to people in the face of the brutal, slanderous assault that came down against the Black Panther Party and Huey P. Newton immediately after his murder. You should know that I was one of the first persons to know that Huey P. Newton had been killed. And I was one of the first persons because Comrade Bakari Olatunji, who leads the party's work right now on the West Coast, he's our West Coast representative, is a nurse. And he was there at Highland Hospital when they brought Huey P. Newton in. And even before they declared that he was dead, they were saying he had been shot. And Bakari called me that morning and said, late that night, and said that Huey P. Newton has been brought in, he's been shot twice, and he's dead. And so I knew it. And the African People's Socialist Party made a determination at that point that by the time that the funeral of Huey P. Newton occurred, we will have defined who Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party was, because immediately after his murder, a newspaper article came out characterizing him as from prime minister, they said, to bum. They are the ones who use terms like scumbags and bum to define Huey P. Newton. They were going to use the assassination of Huey P. Newton as a major assault on the African liberation movement. Through Huey, they were going to kill the Black Revolution of the 1960s in the brains, the minds of other people, and it was going to be enough slander so that it would prevent others from wanting to participate. But despite the recent history of Huey, the people in the community loved Huey P. Newton. They were troubled because Huey P. Newton was not what they wanted him to be, what they needed him to be, what they knew he was as a member of the Black Panther Party. And they would come and talk to us frequently that you got to do something about Huey. And we were challenging Huey in the streets on a regular basis when we would meet him. And when they killed Huey, and then all this stuff came out, we said that by the time of Huey P. Newton's funeral, by the time of the funeral, we will, the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement will have defined who Huey P. Newton was and who the Black Panther Party was. And we took that on with a vengeance. That very same morning, Comrade Biko Lumumba, who led the party's work there in Oakland, California, a giant of a person physically in terms of courage and commitment to our revolution, began showing videos right there where he was shot of the people coming out and watching the videos that we were showing of Huey P. Newton and the Black Panther Party. We were holding meetings right there where he was shot. We initiated public demonstration because what happened was they killed Huey and then the cops disappeared from the streets. They left the streets almost immediately. And so we took the streets, and then we were leading mass demonstrations. And the slogan that we used, who killed Huey? Don't tell no lie. The government, the FBI. And that was the slogan that we took throughout, and we took the streets of Oakland with that slogan. We initiated a process that we we made sure that we took care of Huey P. Newton's widow and organized that every business in the African community that was doing that, we put up jars that they were going to put money into these things to pay for Huey P. Newton's funeral. And then it was because of we were that force that we saw the funeral director came to us and volunteered to take on Huey, came to us and said that they wanted to take care of Huey's funeral. And we printed the program, the party printed the actual program that was used for his funeral. And then beyond that, we created an honor guard. We stood over the coffin where they put him before the funeral. The party did that. And in fact, it's really interesting because I read something this morning about how there's a new book describing something about Tupac and his mother, etc. Well, the fact is that one of the persons who was with me as my security at Huey P. Newton's funeral is somebody who had been with Digital Underground, which was the group that Tupac was with prior to that, who used to rehearse at the Uhuru House in Oakland, California. And so the thing is that the party represents this continuum of struggle, and we refuse to allow them to define the Black Revolution. They were not going to kill the Black Revolution while we were there. And so the Black Revolution was continued. We had this honor guard. And then after the funeral that happened in the church, under Biko Lumumba's leadership, we led this whole mass of hundreds of people who followed the hearse, going to the burial. Well, it wasn't a burial site because he was cremated. But that's what the party was. That's what was happening at the time. That's who the party is. It's the same party. While they wanted to kill the Black Revolution, we built the party with the determined statement that we were here to complete the Black Revolution of the 60s. And while I mentioned in that presentation how Huey P. Newton and the others walked into the state assembly, or however it's characterized, in Sacramento with guns, I think that was in March something. I didn't say that 3 or 4 months prior to that, that this act that they took in Sacramento at the state assembly was one that was prompted by an act that the African People's Socialists, or SNCC, which was a parent in many ways of both the African People's Socialist Party and the Black Panther Party. SNCC I had been arrested along with 4 or 5 other people for tearing out a mural in the City Hall of St. Petersburg, Florida. And this was a time where the movement was providing inspirations for in different iterations in different places around the country. So we had this kind of relationship. This is a part of the history, and this is an explanation in part because the objective was to kill the Black Revolution. And now, and the African People's Socialist Party said, we are not taking one step backwards. We are not taking one step backwards. We will not allow them to say who Huey was, who the Black Panther Party was, who the Black Revolution, what the Black Revolution was. And then we are the ones that represent that continuum from the 1960s up to now, which is why we came under a more violent assault, because we've been assaulted throughout this whole process as the party. Even at that Uhuru House, where that presentation was made, that Uhuru House in Oakland had been raided also by the government because of the political work that we were doing. And so we talking about a continuum, a revolutionary continuum. And this murder of Huey was an attempt to go push us back in history. And the assault on the African People's Socialist Party that happened, that we're engaged in right now, is an attempt to push us back in history. And we said not one step backwards. So I wanted to say those things about the presentation that we just saw. And as you can see, this happened 3 days following the assassination of Huey P. Newton. This was this meeting that that I was speaking to at that moment. So I want to go ahead and turn it over to you, Comrade Director, so we can see if there are any is there how we can extend this discussion beyond what I've had to say. I also want to hold up for everybody to see. I know you've already done it, but this is the June 2023 edition of the Burning Spear newspaper. This is the newspaper that Huey said, despite the fact that there's no longer the Black Panther Party, there's the Burning Spear. Therefore, they haven't done anything by crushing one organization. This is further evidence of that fact and further evidence of why it is the African People's Socialist Party has come under assault all these years, even after the murder of Huey P. Newton. Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you. I mean, just this history is really important for a lot of us too, who are just newly entering into, political life and struggle. And this whole, it's been a continuum, but it's just something that for a lot of us who are entering into this political life don't even have access to this history. But the African People's Socialist Party, as you stated, many times, is the custodian of this history, not just holders of it, but as those who have continued to forward this struggle, to break new ground, to usher in new periods, including the one that we're in now. The African People's Socialist Party really is the custodian for the whole history of African liberation. And so it's just really important what you have brought to the surface, and that this presentation is out, that it's something that we have access to now, and that it's something that, we don't have to learn it from these other sources that have an interest in like co-opting this kind of history to keep it, in one place. So I just really want to salute your leadership.
Let me make just a couple of other quick comments. One, this was the time frame within which the African People's Socialist Party, even, like within the same kind of thought process that gave birth to some of the programs of the Black Panther Party. We created in Oakland, California, Bakri was there, the Bobby Hutton African People's Free Clinic. Was it the Bobby Hutton's African People Free Clinic? And this was a mobile clinic that we had created, and that we were, I referenced the 65th or 69th Ville in that presentation. This was the most impoverished sectors of the African population in East Oakland. And we were taking free medical care. We had got some 40 different volunteer medical workers, and we were taking this medical care to these different communities on a regular basis. I mean, before the government made an assault on us to keep us from being able to do that. So this was named for Bobby Hutton. Bobby Hutton was the first victim of First Panther, who was at 17 years old. And you will see 17, you keep hearing 17, 18 years, not just then, but all up until now. Mike Brown and all the other people who they've killed throughout this country, Tyrone Lewis, these young African men who they feel like they have to wipe out and who are filling prison cells with. So Bobby Hutton was one of the first victims, and he was murdered on April 6, 1968. 2 days after the assassination of Martin Luther King, he was killed in Oakland, California. So we named this for him. Then his mother, Dolly Hutton, Sister Dolly Hutton, was a presence often at the work that we were doing, with that clinic. And then we see years later, in 1996, when the government attacked the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg, Florida, and 300 strong. This preceded July 29, 2023. And 1996, when they attacked the Uhuru House, and there was a young woman, her name was Kinara, but she was given the birth name of Joyce Hutton. She was Bobby Hutton's niece, who had come with our movement from recruited in Oakland, was doing work also in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm just showing you the continuum. I'm showing you that they have not been able to crush the Black Revolution of the 60s, and the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement are central to their inability to do that. Not just because of the murder of Panthers who are here, but the murders of Patrice Lumumba, the murders of Comrade Robert Mangolisa Sobukwe, the murder and overthrow of Nkrumah. The fact is that we are working in all those places, bringing the African Revolution, have brought it back to life, and have put it on a trajectory toward our freedom. So those are the things that I wanted to contribute to that discussion as well. That's what was, all of this was a part of that process. We cannot allow them to separate, fragment our history in the fashion that usually occurs. I was with Huey on the first attempt on his life, which is not spoken of even in this presentation. When Huey P. Newton was hospitalized, first, I forgot the name of the upper class hospital that they took him to, and they cut him open, and then they closed him up, and then they sent him out to the poor people's hospital called Highland Hospital. And then when he went to Highland, they said there was some kind of intestinal blockage, etc. But I am convinced that when they opened him up, what's the name of the other hospital? There's someone in the room who knows the name of the first hospital they took him to. No, anyway, they took him to the first hospital, opened him. I am convinced that they saw something there that they didn't want to have anything to do with, closed him up, sent him to Highland Hospital. I was there with him. I was there almost daily, with Huey P. Newton. I was there when Frederica, his wife, was there, etc. So the African People's Socialist Party, we've had this connection. And even when Huey was under assault, before he was in prison, and when he was in prison, we were communicating. I was communicating on a regular basis with Huey P. Newton. And there are people who are now political prisoners who were in prison at that time, who communicated with us in Oakland when they saw that we had resurrected Huey, at least temporarily. He had come out to make these appearances at the Uhuru House and try to be reconnected to the revolution through that process. I just wanted to say those things. I think it's really important for everybody to understand this. This is not just an event. This is part of a continuum of the African People's Socialist Party to make sure that the Black Revolution of the 60s did not die. Not only did it not die, it's a process of negation where you don't simply say no to what they're doing, but you build forward. And that's what we've been doing with the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru movement. And it's important to say, and none of this could have been done if we were not working and organizing in these communities. That's what has to happen. We have to work the communities. We have to build the people. The people have to be built because that's what the thing about the Panthers was, not that they had good rallies, because they were organizing throughout these communities. They had pulled people into political life. And this is what the objective is. And if there are people who are in the African People's Socialist Party who don't do that, you're in the wrong place. Because the thing is that our future and the future of our people is dependent upon what we do in terms of organizing African people, bringing them into political life right where they are, in the various places we are located around the world. Comrade Director, I've spoken too much. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Yeah, I don't think that's possible, you speaking too much, but I just, I really appreciate what you're, raising, and just really want to unite with it, and want to make sure we take just a couple of minutes for some questions, comments that have come in, and also to acknowledge those who have donated this week to help us reach our $200 goal for the week towards the Uhuru tours, bringing the chairman to the Northeast U.S. And so right now we have people tuning in from St. Louis, Missouri, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Miami, Florida, Britain, Fort Myers, Florida, Portland, Oregon, Cincinnati, Ohio, Newark, New Jersey, Battle Creek, Michigan, San Diego, California, Lakeland, Florida, South Africa, Largo, Florida, Oakland, California, Grenada, West Indies, Chicago, Illinois, Bermuda, Gainesville, Florida, Lawrenceville, Georgia, Marion County, Georgia, Ecuador, Liberia, West Africa, and Long Island, New York, all tuned in with us this morning. So, Uhuru comrades, thank you so much for joining us and in this profound discussion. Also, thank you to comrades Mwezi, Ann Hirsch, Comrade Raya, Erica, Aronde, Wendy, Deputy Chair Onazane Yeshitela, Charles, Michael, Mattoon, Brendan, Len, Penny, and Lisa for your contributions today to the uhurutours.com/donate. donate. Thank you so much for making this tour, a reality. Again, this fall, the chairman is bringing The Verdict Is In, Reparations Now to the Northeast U.S. And one of the questions was, as we spoke of Tupac and Afeni Shakur, a question was asked, didn't Afeni Shakur speak at the 1982 World Tribunal on Reparations? And yes, she did. Her testimony, as well as many others, are featured in The Verdict Is In, Reparations Now. So you definitely want to go ahead and pre-order at theburningspear.store. So let's take a look at just a couple of questions. This one, Chairman, comes from Comrade Syrup C in Britain, who says, I wanted to ask the question for the chairman. I'm interested to know if he sees the African nation on the continent and in current U.S. Turtle Island borders as part of what's called the Third World or Global South.
Well, I know those are terms that are bandied about quite often. I think the third world concept is something that goes back as far as Frantz Fanon, who talked about a third world. I think our analysis has become a bit sharper in the sense that what we say is that there is a world economy, a complete world economy, not a lot of different worlds, but one world. And this world economy is parasitic. It's a colonial mode of production that's locked the entire world. But it's a parasitic relationship that's locked us into a process where the vast majority of the people who are probably characterized as third world are people who live under colonial domination. And what's characterized as the first world is that population that benefits from this colonial relationship. I think that we are much more effective let me talk about global South, global. I mean, people can say that, but I think we are much more effective in terms of giving direction to the struggle we're involved in when we recognize that we're looking at a colonial mode of production. I participated in a discussion in 2007 that I invite people to look at in Huelva, Spain, where it was an international conference that I was invited to participate in. I think people should go and look for that presentation I made there. And it was something that was supposed to talk about the relationship between the global North and the global South. And I just really feel like to give it this kind of characterization as if it were regionally based, or if it was a geographic the thing, it was actually what we were looking at is colonial mode of production. And that locked the world into a particular relationship of poverty for the vast majority as a part of the process that brought wealth and resources to this minority sector of the population of the world. I was not attempting to evade that question. I just think the way it's handled has been inadequate. Just like this whole thing of people of color kind of stuff that recognizes that if you ain't white, most times you're catching hell. But that doesn't give you the right understanding, because Japan would be people of color, but Japan was an imperialist country that colonized people as well and united with colonialism. The big problem that Japan had with America and Europe was that it defied the ability of the white people to dominate Asia because they felt like they should be dominating Asia and was dominating much of Asia and committed horrible offenses against people who were there. So they're just inadequate. That's all I'm saying. We're searching for a better, more scientific explanation and definition of the relationship.
Uhuru, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Comrade Syrup C, for your question. I know, Syrup C, you also have other questions that I think we're waiting to get into the queue, and very active in the chat. So just want to recognize this comrade in Britain. And also want to read this comment from Comrade Tafari in South Africa, or Occupied Azania. This is one of my favorite speeches by our chairman. Several people have said that, Chairman, around this presentation that you made. Also, Comrade Kenya says, I remembered all of that. I had the honor under the party's leadership to be there and to have participated in this historic meeting and funeral of Huey P. Newton. Uhuru, Comrade Kenya.
Yeah.
Uhuru. So we have another question from Comrade Don. I believe out in the San Diego area, says Uhuru Chairman, this semester I had to write an essay about the connection between leadership and morality. The academics have only U.S. presidents to epitomize leadership. The Black Panther Party and the African People's Socialist Party are the revolutionary movements of U.S. history. However, morality is something often not afforded to Africans whose very existence is quote unquote illegal. What then is morality? That's Don's question.
Thank you, Don. I think that's a really important kind of question, because the fact of the matter is that morality has been always defined in a fashion that meets the requirements of the rulers of a society. I don't care if that's biblically or what have you. That morality is that, and from the perspective of the slave, what is moves to liberate the slave, what moves to destroy colonialism and oppression, exploitation is moral, and that which oppresses and the people that works against the rights of the people to be free is immoral. It is moral to require that the United States be held accountable for genocide under the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. That's moral. And the United States at different times pretended to believe in the morality of it, at least as long as it was only applied to white people. But even that was problematic, because they understood that when it's applied to white people, it opened the doors for it to be applied to other people. So for 40 years, even after the United Nations passed that convention, the United States refused to ratify because of the assumption that Black people in this country and other people and indigenous people and other people would charge the United States with genocide. So, it's a definition that that in the command of the oppressor, everything that they do to us is moral. Killing Nat Turner was moral. There was nothing, you can't even get them to say that slavery was immoral. They might have said it's a blip on the history or something like that. They don't say it's immoral. So morality, from the perspective of the colonized, from the perspective of the revolution, is that which advances the interests of the oppressed peoples of the world and the oppressed people in any given circumstances. That's moral. You can't do anything immoral in that situation. And immorality is that which does what is required to keep people oppressed and exploited. So I hope that was helpful. That was Don, I think I was responding to. Also, I want to say this because I think it's important, because we mentioned feigning. Also, we mentioned Huey. And I want to say that I like Huey. It wasn't just that he was all the things, but Huey and Afeni. These were quality people. Not just people who were trying to get likes and stuff like that, who were good for making speeches. They were good people. And I knew them, both. And I just wanted to make that comment that these were good people and some of my favorite people. I know people who, and have known people who have come to be, held up as, really remarkable and great people, et cetera, et cetera. But Huey was all right. He was my guy. And so was Afeni. Yeah. Uhuru. Thank you, Don.
Uhuru. Don says, I'm writing this answer down because that was so good. Uhuru. And yes, thank you so much, Chairman. And again, really appreciate the African People's Socialist Party and the theory of African internationalism and your leadership in being able to redefine these forces for us and the whole African liberation struggle, but for the whole world, so that we can understand history, the way it actually is and how it's actually being carried out, and to also understand the world as it really is, and not, how we wish it or, wanted to believe, or how we were told to believe it. All of this is challenging every single notion, every single definition imposed on us by the colonizer, even this whole thing around morality. That was really powerful. We're nearing the end of today's study, and I just want to acknowledge that we also have a $20 donation from Comrade Maureen. So in total, we've raised in today's study, each week for until the tour actually begins, we have a goal to raise $200 every Sunday. So to kickstart us off, today we raised $350. So Uhuru, Comrade, and we don't have to stop there. You can go to uhurutours.com/donate at any point of your day throughout the week to support the efforts, getting the chairman to the Northeast U.S., getting out this book. The Verdict is in Reparations Now, which is going to be an extremely important document that is going to be in the possession of the people as we study this, as we read this, as we see this history, but as we also see that the work has been done, the studies have been done, the verdict is in, reparations are owed to African people. That is, the demand, and this is the critical question. And these are the questions that we came to, in 1982, and it's something that they're trying to say is some invention from somebody else's plan in Russia somewhere. This is what they're attacking our party and our leadership with today. This is we've already done it. We've done this work to make reparations a household word. And this is the kind of stuff that's going to be out there serving as evidence as we put this whole social system on trial for what it has done historically to Africa and African people and colonized and oppressed peoples the world over. So again, you can also pre-order this book at theburningsphere.store. So as we wrap up today's study, Chairman, I just want to see, oh man, we have all these other questions coming in now. All right. Let me see. Someone named their username, Chairman, I'll take this last one. Their username is Snail Shell on YouTube. Says, do you have any advice on how to strengthen Black and Indigenous Brown unity and solidarity for Uhuru and against colonialism? And that'll be our last question for today.
I just want to say that the party is involved in a lot of different things in different fronts. And one of the things that I really would call on Snail Shell, is that it? To do is to go to handsoffuhuru.org. That's involved right now in mobilizing peoples throughout the United States and around the world in this process of uniting with the struggle of African people and uniting the overall struggle against colonialism globally. And also, you should be prepared you should go to blackisbackcoalition.org. Because this coalition is preparing for a conference right here in St. Louis on August 12th and 13th. And on August 12th, there is going to be an unveiling of fourplex where Africans who are coming out of the prison system will be provided housing while they participate in an African internationalist workforce program that would teach people how the culinary arts for a center, a bakery cafe that we're building here. And the complex, the fourplex that we are unveiling is named, the fourplex itself is named for Mufunda Lake, who was an incredible organizer out of Alabama in the prison system there, and who died in prison. And then the 4 different apartments in the fourplex will be named for Sundiata Akoli, my man, from the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, Matula Shakur as another, Desi Woods, another person, and Asada Shakur. So all of that's going to be happening. You can find out about all of this stuff going to the email or the whatever you call it, platforms I just mentioned. I want to unite with you, Comrade Director. And like you said, we've been there and done that. You know, all this stuff they're talking about, that the Russian, we've been there, done that. I want to say that it's really important to make the point that when they bombed Move in Philadelphia, who said to the people that reinforcements are on the way, and who went in and built organization on the ground, has been there ever since. And we built institutions that's been there for 25, 30 years in the Uhuru furniture stores and things like that. And we've got a market that's been there with more than 100 Black people vending there and contributing to feeding their family. When they murdered young Mike Brown in Ferguson, who came into St. Louis to deal with that? The African People's Socialist Party did. We are speaking now from an institution that was created during that process. When we look at what happened with the murder of Fred Hampton, who went into Chicago to build the National People's Democratic Uhuru movement, and where Fred Hampton's widow became the first head of that organization, and his son became the first leader of that organization in Chicago, Illinois. When they've murdered African people all over the continent. I mentioned, they murdered Lumumba. They overthrew Nkrumah. They've done all this stuff, but who has been there as a consequence or subsequent to that to keep the revolution alive? We've been there, done that, been there, done that. And so all of this stuff that they are talking about, we built the first mobilization against the war that the United States was making against the people in Afghanistan, the people in Iraq. We built the biggest Southeast anti-war mobilization. Yeah, we had demonstrations at the gates of MacDill Air Force Base where it was coming from. Was no charge of Russia. We didn't need Russians to tell us that we need to be free and that we were opposed to tyranny, that we were opposed to unjust wars. We didn't need the Russians. In fact, Russia has been slow in terms of getting on board around some of these questions that we've been talking about. And so that's the reality that we are talking. So that's what we are dealing with. We've been there, done that. And we're going to keep on being there and doing that. And the Black Liberation Movement, because of that, the Black Liberation Movement will continue to be alive and be there and do that. You understand? That's what it is. So we say, relentless vanguard up, Uhuru. Africa,
please, where led to. Uhuru.
Even that slogan from South Africa, they murdered Sobukwe. Who was there in South Africa the day after the murder of Sobukwe? Who is saying that, right? Who has said after the murder of Sobukwe, who has said, no compromise, no surrender? That's what we have done, right? So we're there, been there, done that, gonna keep on being there, doing that. Uhuru. Yeah. We're gonna do it till y'all run out of flashbang grenades.
Uhuru. And tear gas and all the other stuff. Yeah. Uhuru, Chairman. But I wanted to say, Zwelake. You said, who was there? We were there. Yes. Uhuru. And you said, Uhuru, been there, done that. We gonna be there. We're gonna keep doing that. But one thing we're not doing is going back. That's what we're not doing.
That's right.
Or whatever.
We're not going backwards. We're not going backwards. We ain't going on no more plantations. Forget it, boss. We ain't doing that no more. The colonialism is over. The oppressed, we are not going to be back in your colonized plantations anywhere, whether it's in the United States or Africa, etc. Been there, done that, ain't going backwards. Adelante siempre, forward ever, backwards never. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Oh, wow. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for our closing announcements. Chairman, comrades, this has been an excellent study. Don't let it just be something we study. Let it be something that pushes us to action. Become a part of this movement. There are so many ways that you can do that. And you can become a part of the vanguard leadership, the African People's Socialist Party. Go to apspuhuru.org and connect with the African People's Socialist Party, no matter where it is you are in the world. And if there's not a branch or a chapter where you are today, be the one that builds that branch, builds that chapter, bring the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, and this whole struggle to the community where you are organizing. And also join the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. Support this fight back, this counteroffensive. And again, follow the chairman on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. And subscribe to the Burning Spirit TV YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. Thank you, comrades, also for donating. And we'll catch you back here next Sunday. Uhuru.